And welcome back to another week of Behind the Lens. I'm Debbie Elias, film critic, creator, and host of Behind the Lens, where we go behind the lens and below the line with all those movers and shakers, the film and TV makers, the producers, directors, writers, actors, cinematographers, production designers, costume designers, film editors, sound mixers, stunt coordinators, composers, VFX gurus, you name it. Oh, even hair and makeup. We've done quite a few of those this year too. You name it, and I'll talk to them. And I know many of you listen to what we're talking about. Now this week, we're going to take a look at a new indie film that just released in select theaters in the LA area and on Eventive VOD this past Friday. It's called Sweet Relief. And you're going to hear my exclusive chat with the writer, director, editor, NICK VERDI, talking about it. And something both of our films today have in common, not just Sweet Relief, but our other film we're going to take a look at. Everybody is wearing multiple hats. We have writer, director, editor combos, director, editor, writer, actor combos. When you're in the indie world and you're making a film, quite often you are going to wear a multiplicity of hats, and hopefully you're able to juggle them so you don't go insane. Nick is one of those filmmakers. But then we're also going to take one more look at Dances with Films 2025 with the oh-so-funny mockumentary American Comic with director, cinematographer, editor Daniel J. Clark and writer-actor JOE KWACZALA. And American Comic helped close out the festival last night. It had a 6:30 time slot, perfect for a Sunday night, end of the weekend film. I know we spoke on Saturday, and when we did, they were about 50% sold just in tickets, plus all the badge holders. When you go to film festivals, many of you know, you can buy a badge, which gives you access to, in some cases, everything, in some cases, select groupings of films. So that was very well attended. So I can't wait to hear how it played out and if it won any awards at the festival, because it was also the world premiere of American Comic. But first up, let's turn our lens to Sweet Relief. It's written and directed and edited by NICK VERDI. And this is a film that starts out as a slow burn, but it gains momentum as seemingly unrelated characters and storylines begin to interweave until a shocking, explosive climax in what easily can be described as an arthouse thriller. Story is this: parents and teachers in a small New England town are in a panic over kids playing Sweet Relief, an online murder challenge in which the player must nominate someone they'd like to see die. 3 teenagers play the game as a joke, unaware of the dire consequences awaiting them. When it comes to death, nothing is a joke when you get right down to it. Especially an online murder challenge. Wow. Meanwhile, 2 other people, Jess and Nathan, are a bored millennial couple struggling to get by. Nathan is annoyed with his mother. Jess is annoyed with Nathan. Jess's curiosity and boredom lead to a dangerous situation of her own when she meets Gerald, a confidential police informant and perhaps a sadistic child killer. In other words, everybody in this movie has a reason to want to kill someone. So get ready for that. As you'll hear in this exclusive interview, Nick and I break down the film as he explains the film's genesis, including the challenge of shooting in 6 consecutive days with a large cast and outdoor settings, and given the film's non-linear narrative. For Nick, as you'll hear him talk about, this is very important because he's made films before, but it's shooting a weekend here, a weekend there, a weekend 6 months later. This had to be done in 6 days, nonstop. You couldn't break them up. So it's interesting to hear him discuss that as being one of the biggest obstacles he had to overcome to make the film. And as you'll hear, he details the evolution of the story and some of the decisions he made along the way, including a major script change in terms of character. Strong suits of the film are solid production values, character development, which in turn boasts some standout performances by Paul Lazar and B.R. Yeager. There's a unique blend of pastoral imaging against these unsettling themes. Joseph Ogden's lighting and lensing, absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And then there is the importance of Jack Stratton's sound design and Renato Montenegro's score. The sound and score are a real highlight in this film. It's very whimsical. The Jack brings in all of these wonderful sounds of nature, of the outdoors, so everything becomes very immersive. And then shooting a lot of things at night adds another layer. So I definitely, if you can see this one, I encourage you to see it. It is at the Laemmle Encino right now and on Eventive VOD. But for right now, take a listen as Nick Verdi discusses Sweet Relief. Hi, Nick. It's Debbie. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Debbie. It's great to meet you over the phone here.
Well, I have to say, I did not know what to expect with Sweet Relief. And I am thrilled to say that by the end of the film, I love what you did.
I hope so.
To tell this story. You subvert expectations. You give us such a contrast here. And we're filled with ambiguities. I like that it's unsettling and disturbing in so many respects. And yet you give it a very pastoral look with the forest and hiking through there and that beautiful little lake. And it's like, what could ever go wrong in a lovely rural town like this? Of course,
that is correct.
Of course, these are the kind of lovely little rural towns where something bad always goes wrong. So, but just, what was the genesis for the idea for this story?
Well, it's interesting. It started as I had an initial pull to make a film with essentially I wanted to try, and the previous film we did, we shot in 6 days but spread over a couple months, so it was random Saturdays. And made a movie. It's about an hour and 27 minutes, and I was like, on the next film, in order to get my friend Jack to do the sound, it had to be in one stint of shooting like a normal way, and I was, it's like money is every day, so I was like, can I do it in 6 days, but 6 days straight? And how could I, what is not a suicidal undertaking, you know what I mean, to try to do a movie in 6 days straight? And my thought was, if it was a few small little worlds, almost like doing short films, as opposed to, usually with a movie you have your main 5 people that have to be there every day or something like that, or 2 people. And I was, if I can break this up so each actor doesn't have to be there for more than a couple days, I wouldn't have to take too much of anyone's time except for the crew and myself, So I was there was a drive to make something more fragmented like that. And then started in on this idea about the online challenge, which is something I never was so. I always knew that would just be an entry point and not the totality of the thing. But it's interesting how much I ended up becoming more intrigued by people attached to this online thing and the psychic existence of this online thing, which is a lot of people kind of making assumptions and creating stories in their own heads, and you know, the way and also, you know, going into this pastoral thing that you mentioned, you know, it's I really like this idea that we see, you know, I wanted to do, we had the option to do the widescreen anamorphic lens. I was thinking about all that John Carpenter, that kind of thing, you know. He's like, if you got an anamorphic lens, it makes your movie look like it's got a bigger budget or something. I was like, that might be interesting, you know. And as we played with that anamorphic lens, I was looking at these frames, you know, these classic cinematic frames. I really liked the idea that we really see a film where it really soaks into the surrounding space that these characters are in, while these characters are sort of stuck in their own heads, you know, looking at the phone and stuck in the screen and thinking about these non-existent, when it comes down to it, non-existent phantoms, and sort of dissociating from this world that we see them engulfed in, you know? And so, yeah, it's strange. It was a long process of writing and rewriting these different things. The film had many more pieces originally. There's even an original storyline where Elisa, who plays the main character, Jess, the final girl, she has a twin sister, and I was trying to get her twin sister in the movie, too. There's going to be this whole dynamic of her and her twin who's visiting, and her twin was going to get kidnapped first by this Gerald guy, and all these things are going to happen. And I had this gigantic, you know, 3-hour story with all these tangents, and originally my whole idea was to make something easy to shoot in 6 days, so then I, you know, had this giant stack of narratives and twists and turns and all these things, and ended up whittling it down. You know, I heard someone say, you don't start with simplicity, you end with it, you know, so I try to kind of end with this whittled down version. And by the end, I'm like, I ask myself, I'm not sure where this came from or exactly, you know, what, it's hard to, you know, chart the drift of a story in these ways. And then, of course, once you start shooting, you know, and I'm very, very open to letting actors improvise and add to their lines and workshop stuff out, especially if it's not something that's going to be in one take. If I know it's going to be, you know, cut, people are kind of free to roam. So, you know, it changed so much in those 6 days of shooting once it actually became real. Yeah, sorry, that's not much of an answer there.
It is an answer because it tells me about your thought process and how you have a very non-linear thought process.
Yes, it's hard. Yeah, very true. I don't know what's going on in there, but there is one.
And it comes through with your fragmented stories that you have. Because I have to tell you, Nick, you have a big principal cast here.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a huge undertaking, especially when you want to shoot this in 6 days. And a very large portion of this is shot outside. They're all exteriors. You're in forested areas. You're dealing with water in a lake. So you have all of these other extraneous elements happening as well.
Yes. Weather being the big given, you know, the outside force. I was, you know, looking every day to see if there wasn't last minute rain, you know, things like that.
The thing is, your location is very much a character here.
Yes, very true.
It is very much a character here because so much of what we see unfolding with this murder challenge game, it all takes place outside.
Yes.
And then the events that are happening that are not part of this wacky internet murder challenge game are also happening outside.
Very true. Wow, I never really considered this. Very true.
We have cross-contamination here of the murder challenge game with a real sociopath.
Yes.
Actually, with a couple sociopaths. So
right.
I love that cross-contamination that's happening in the same areas. It's not like things are happening on one side of town and the other side of the town. No, this is within eyeshot of each other. And it adds some absurdity. It speaks a lot as to people that are mired down in their phones, in their smartphones, and not paying attention to the world around them. You've got that little subtext happening here.
Yes, certainly true. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I love that notion that, you know, it's almost like, one of the things while I was developing this story was this problem I kept hitting where I knew, you know, so there's this, you know, I'm playing with this sweet angel masked man character, which is, you know, I love my Halloweens and my Friday the 13th, you know, and I was really thinking about those movies and what it means to make a movie. You know, I knew this would not be a horror movie tonally, in the sense of it's a little more grounded in a documentary feeling, art house, more reality kind of thing, you know, and I'm like thinking about the presence of this type of character in this kind of movie, and I'm like, you know, there is no, you know, when it comes down to it, there is no icon boogeyman generally, you know. It's like I could have made a movie that more leaned into that tone, where it's a little bit more of a ghost story, a little bit more of a something not so based in reality, a little more of an elevated, or not elevated perhaps, but you know what I mean. And so I'm like, if there's going to be a masked man in this movie, it's not some phantom, you know, it's a guy dressing up. And when it comes down to it, it's almost like when people try to take something like Batman very seriously, you know, where Batman is not a superhero, or he's not a man with he's not a mythical figure. He's like a rich guy that goes out in a bat costume, you know? It's kind of a strange thing. So I was like, it's going to be a similar thing here, where this is just a guy dressing up. And when it comes down to it, he should not be this zombie-like undefeatable machine. It's just a guy dressing up in this mask and an outfit, which when it comes down to it, it's kind of silly. And I'm like, I think the key for me was realizing that the guy is scary, not because of his getup, but because the guy is scary. You know? And he's actually scarier when he's a regular guy, you know? And, you know, it was not one of those things that was such a thought beforehand, but, you know, as you work on the project, you start to, you know, on any project, the things that you're doing become apparent to you last, maybe, when you're the one actually doing it. But there certainly is this through line of the movie that everyone is afraid of an imagined phantom, you know, that exists psychically, you know, something that we love to fear, the idea of happening, the idea of this person out there, the idea of somebody taking our kids, the idea of somebody doing this or that. And when it comes down to it, it's someone next door, someone you know, someone you're supposed to trust, like someone that is or is not connected to the police. You know, it's like there are the boogeymen are generally the guy next door, or someone down the street, or someone in the grocery store, you know, or, you know, a lot of times it's, you know, it is someone going after the kids, but going after the kids in school, or going after the kids, you know, somewhere else. I don't know. So, one of those, that became apparent as a subject of the movie, that people are looking in the wrong places for the things they are afraid of, right?
Absolutely. And of course, at the end of the day, everybody in this film, with the exception, I think, of Deborah, of Hannah's mom, everybody in this film is wearing a mask, even though it might not look like one, because you've got Hannah and Corey and Lily, and if they're not wearing masks, I don't know what's wrong with the world. If people can't see that they are wearing masks, that who they present themselves as is not who they are and what they're up to.
Yeah. Yes, that's great.
Same thing with Nathan and Jess. Nathan doesn't want to believe that that there is a falsity about anyone or anything. It's just all crap.
Yeah.
Jess is kind of hard to figure out until we see this lack of connection between Nathan and Jess.
Yeah.
They are not a united front by any stretch of the imagination. They are not on the same page. And that becomes very, very apparent when they're at the lake together.
Yes.
And he's like, look, I got things I got to do. And she goes, well, you got your own car. You can go. Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to leave you. Well, you have your own car. You can go. You wonder, why are these two together? But when you look, this is where your location also matters, because in a town like this, a small rural town like this, some people are together, they don't belong together, but because there's no other option. Take a look at the bar.
Yeah.
That is a gorgeous bar, and it's empty. The bar is gorgeous, Nick. It looks better than a small little town like this deserves. But nobody's there.
Yes, it's true. It is true. I know, too cute, all dressed up and no one there. Except for one terrible guy.
But you have so much happening here, and the mask thing is a big element, and it may be undercurrent for most people. They might not pick up on it right away, but subconsciously, by the end of the film, they're going to realize everybody is not who they seem to be.
Totally. Starting
with our sweet angel and our friend Gerald.
Yes.
And I have to commend you on casting Gerald, because every second he's on screen, the two words that kept coming to my mind: creepy and greasy. Does he ever wash his hair? And seriously, I think you may have overdone it showing us Gerald's plumber cracks.
I know. It's certainly a lot of that.
There's a lot of that.
That was a problem that my friend, the actor Ben, was having, and he was like, no, this is great. This is terrible, right? I'll just deal with it. Just let it happen. I'm like, all right, let's see. And then it happened quite a bit. Certainly happened quite a bit.
And it looks funny. The first time it was really funny. And it happens in weird places, too.
Yes. While he's stuffing Jess into a bag, and there's a little odd comic relief of plumber's crack.
And you don't
horrible.
And you don't realize, because you can't see what he's doing.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, what is he doing? Is he like trying to take a shit in the woods? And he can't.
Right.
So you leave that to the mind's eye, to our imaginations. But it adds an element of humor where you would not think there would be anything funny. So that also helps to distract you from what Gerald is actually doing.
Right.
So, just so many elements here, but I love the fragmentation of the people and their individual focuses and stories.
Thank you so much. No, I mean, just hearing you talk right now is so, just so validating and so exciting that you are. God, you've just gotten so many of, I was just saying the other day how I always think making movies is like making a Rorschach test, and you see what someone sees in it, and I've got a lot of ideas myself, but I'm always more intrigued to hear what other people see that I have not even seen or maybe processed fully, and just all the things you're saying are so exciting and validating to me, so I just thank you so much for everything you're saying.
Well, thank you for making a film that actually lets that come through.
Good.
So that it can be seen.
Yeah.
You give Mr. McDaniel, Paul Lazar does an amazing job with that role. You give him a great little monologue, especially when he breaks down with the phrase, a cultural phenomenon affecting us all.
Yeah.
And that speaks to so many things. For him, it's obviously he's speaking to the internet and social media. However, I do find it very hilarious when you could have called, you could have sent a message. I only use email. Well, dude, if you're using email, you're on the internet. So.
Yep, exactly.
So
it's different for him, right?
It's
different when I use it, but no one else does it right.
And he's a science teacher, which really questions the quality of education in this town.
Right. It's almost like who's the pushier guy gets to be the guy in charge, maybe, right?
Yeah. there's so many little tidbits like that you have packed in here, Nick. And I can't believe you got it all in 6 days.
Cannot. My God, I cannot either. We did it. We somehow did it.
How long was the editing process to have all of this footage, to have the fragmented stories that you have to weave together? How long was this editing process, and who was your editor?
So I edited the film myself as well. And what's wild is, so I mean, I've been making movies since I was very little. Back in the day, did the VHS camera. I had the big VHS tapes, the regular size.
Of course.
And then I had the tiny VHS-C tapes. And so when you're doing stuff like that, I found out later you could do this editing on 2 VCRs thing. I didn't know about that. I was editing in the camera. So whenever you go out to shoot, you got to basically edit as you go, and I did that for so long that my brain kind of does that easily while shooting. So with this movie in particular, with all of these pieces to get in 6 days, I almost had it simplified. I didn't even have it. I had more of a simplified script in 12 segments. There are these 12 segments that weren't not even necessarily 12 scenes, but 12 pieces of shooting to do.
Okay.
So it was like 3 a day, I think, something along those lines. So it was like I ended up finally structuring that into the shooting schedule, and then when it comes down to it, the shots were pretty decided too, what the shots were going to be, and I even sort of decided at what point I'd cut, so I knew how long we'd be that wide and when it would go into the singles, close-ups, or things like that. And later I would, slim it down simply by, taking a line or two out. But so when it came down to editing, we shot this movie in 6 days. I maybe took a couple days off, and then the editing was essentially just dragging the footage into the editor and lining it up to a degree. And, there's not a lot of takes either. So there's maybe, we had 3 takes sometimes to choose from, and a lot of times it was clear which take worked better for somebody, and I'd pull mostly from. So I had the rough cut of this assembled in about 5 days, which is wild to say. And so did that immediate cut 5 days, I had my friend Renato Montenegro doing the music before we started shooting, so I already was playing with music on that first edit. But I had the cast and the main cast over, or some of them. I had Adam and Elisa and Ben B.R. Yeager over. We all watched this rough cut, and I toyed with that a little bit over the next 5 months maybe. I just kept tinkering with it in different ways. And also the opening credits has this footage that I ended up shooting in October. The opening credits has this, is alongside this, cell phone video of the kids, doing something onto the game. And I shot that later as a separate piece. But, so then the picture finally locked, and maybe 5 months later, and then I went and saw Jack, who recorded the sound, and we mixed the sound in his basement, where he's got a little surround sound set up. So the initial cut was so fast, which is wild to say, but it's only because shooting this movie was essentially setting myself up with a little Lego kit and a set of directions and said, put A to B and B to C and C to D, and there was not too many options. I used maybe 95% of the shots that we
Oh my God.
just because it was so decided on beforehand to even make it work, which is wild. But that is part of the help of being the writer, director, editor, is that I'm kind of doing... It's like the writing continues through shooting and through editing, but you're doing all these jobs at the same time. When I'm on set shooting, it's like I'm rewriting as we go, and I'm sort of editing in my head, so I kind of know, it's clear. It's good to know in your gut when you've got it and you can move on, and then assemble and go.
Especially with a low-budget, no-budget, micro-budget film, because the budget is not there to let you stop and redo, and get up to 15, 16 takes.
Yes, exactly. In a perfect world, but somehow, at this point, I've only ever had this experience, having no money, but there's something beautiful limitation to me, which is like, I don't know, it's sort of like the weather thing, where it's like, when you're out of control of a certain thing, you kind of just have to be more creative, it makes you more creative, and you roll those punches, and sometimes I'm afraid if I ever get a day where I get the money hose, then I won't be as creative, because you can have the money hose to solve your problems, and then you get a less inspired
product.
No, so that's my fear. I'm not sure how much more freedom I'd like, where it's like when the limitation makes you so focused that you excel. You know what I mean? That's how I feel.
I personally prefer the not a lot of money because it does force creativity.
Yes, definitely.
And
definitely. I'd love to pay my collaborators. That's the only
yes,
thing. If I could pay something, they could take work off for 6 months, and then that's it.
I'm a firm believer, and you force yourself to be more creative. And if you can't do it, then maybe you are doing the wrong thing in life.
Yeah, right, which is a hard thing for some.
Right.
I would never want to fix that.
So you mentioned two very important elements of this film, but before I jump to them, I have to compliment you on that montage that you put together at the 70-minute mark, where Sweet Angel is watching.
Yeah.
He comes to Hannah in the night, and then he's watching the video that was done by Corey, Lily, and Hannah and posted online.
Right.
And that montage is so great as you're cutting back and forth. So that we see this one is saying this, Corey's talking about this, and how much she hates this person, and Lily's talking about this and how much she hates that person, and they're forcing Hannah to talk about, okay, so who does she want to kill? Who does she want dead? Yeah. That is so seamlessly cut, but that is such an effective montage. And because Sweet Angel is watching this, and you're cutting back to Sweet Angel as he's watching this video, it's actually quite chilling. But
I'm so glad.
Really nicely done.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm glad that it resonates and worked out. It's one of those things where I had never made a film with such a particular story, where there is a denouement, where something, all these threads come to a head, and I was really hoping it would land, and you never know if it lands till you're sitting there editing the threads, but I appreciate that so much. I felt that come to life when I was cutting that together too, and I really do appreciate you saying that, truly.
You had to, and to see the different color palettes that we're looking at. Because we see the beauty of the outdoors with Corey and Lily and Hannah. Then we see the reds and the dark that comes with Sweet Angel. Even the lighting in Hannah's bedroom is great. So kudos to Joseph on his lighting.
Joe is great. Did a great job.
Really great job. Outdoors, you've got natural light, and it looks beautiful, and the light is bouncing off the green of the trees, but yet in the forest, really heavy forested area, you have all the dead leaves from fall there, but everything else looks like spring and summer. So you have these color contrasts, courtesy of Mother Nature, happening, and Joseph does a great job picking all of that up on camera.
That's great. You'll love to hear that.
Now, the two elements that really stand out is Jack Stratton's sound and Renato's score. That score is so fantastic. It has a whimsical quality to it. And then you've got some needle drops happening in there that are almost like a Greek chorus.
Yes.
But it is the score itself it just has that whimsy to it. And of course, we've got somebody in a mask, in an ugly mouse mask, calling himself Sweet Angel. So if you don't see some whimsy in there somewhere.
Yeah, I love it. No, I think that's on point. Whimsy for sure. And I got to do that. It's a vocal rounds song. He wrote the lyrics.
I love it.
We had this whole, we were talking a lot on Zoom, talking about our ideas and stuff. We had this long meeting, and then we got off, and he texted me 5 minutes later. He was like, I actually have this other idea. I know 2 singers that I could ask to do this, and he whipped up these lyrics, and I was just like, this is the beauty of working with absolutely incredibly talented people. It's like once you get on the same page, it's just like everybody's genius just gets to shit, And it was like, so it was such a fantastic, and he really, Renato is a fantastic musician, really came through on these different things. And then Jack Stratton is just fantastic at what he does as well. I had an incredible time doing the sound design with him and everything, and he's just a great guy. Both two really talented people, and then Joey on top of that is just fantastic as well. It's been a blessed experience working with all these people.
Jack's sound design and the mix on it is so good. I love the incorporation of the great sound design of the outdoors. We hear soft wind. We hear wind increase with some aided tweaking. But we get nature. We have leaves crunching underfoot. Wind at one point, like at the 4350 mark, it really, there's a hollowness, a bass hollowness to it that grows and grows. As we're watching Gerald and his struggles, we hear voices far in the background, like people out having a good time. They're very faint, but they're there. And then crows, a few crows, their sound, their cacaw pops in there.
Thank you for all this. No, those crows were stuck in there particularly. It was a great one. Thank you. And all those sounds of, there was families, playing in the water surrounding us. They're kind of giving us these beautiful gifts of these little things. But thank you so much for noticing all these things. You put a little fly sound in there, and you hope someone notices, and you're noticing it. So
I definitely did. And, of course, the crickets at night. You can't have a forest. You can't have nighttime. You can't have summer without crickets at night.
Yes. It takes everyone to a certain place in their head mentally, maybe, right?
That's it. Exactly. And then, of course, you even went so far as to having the sound of cars driving on a gravel finish.
Right.
Not a clean cement highway, but a more graveled finish.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people might not know what that sounds like. However, when you grow up in suburban Philly and spend half your life down the Jersey Shore in the Pine Barrens, you know what cars on gravel sounds like because there's no paving down there.
Yes.
So, but all of
only
these,
the real heads know.
What Jack did with the sound and integrating score, that whimsy of the scoring into certain areas with the natural sounds you have, that really immerses us in this world, Nick. You created a contained world where all of this is happening. And nobody's really batting an eye, which just makes it even funnier.
Yes. Thank you.
How long did Jack spend putting the sound together?
That's a good question. We talked a lot about things for a bit, and I did, before we got together to really do the mix, I added things here and there in that few month interim between the rough cut and then the picture lock visit. It's hard to remember. I know we shot August 2022, and we were doing the sound design the following February. So in that time, it was like a slow add a thing here, add a thing there. We also did some sort of soundscape design things that are present when Gerald is with the bag in the wood. Also in the bar, there's some sounds that are more mechanical sounding things that we tried, and Jack is really just loves having fun, seeing what sticks or what doesn't, trying things out. It's like so it's just like another. It's like you play off, one inspires the other. To try this out, try that out. But no, it is wild. It is wild how much fun it is, and one of the mainly exciting aspects of filmmaking is that sense of when you really do get that feeling that you made a world. It's like a world that is like a dream of the one you're in currently. It's like you put all of those things. I always love when filmmakers. I was just watching some Lynn Ramsey movies again recently, and I love how the things she chooses to show or use are direct little. It's like accessing your deepest memories or your most sensitive, a certain sound or or she always does things where a character's in bare feet stepping into a thing, and the feeling of something on bare feet is a very direct feeling when you see that. It's like like a pastiche of these very particular, evocative, deeply psychologically triggering elements, and I feel like that has such a big part in you can create a little world, but for it, what's really successful is when the world is built in someone else's head while they're watching. It's like they add to it themselves unconsciously while they're watching it, and you just have to. It's about choosing the things that kind of give that spark of the entire life that the viewer is bringing with themselves to the movie. You know?
Absolutely.
So very exciting. Yeah, all very exciting.
So a question for you: at the end of the day, the film is everybody can see it.
Yeah.
What did you, wearing all of your hats here, writer, director, editor, producer, what did you learn about yourself as a filmmaker that you can now take forward into your future works?
Wow, that's a big one. God, well, there are so many things. One thing I'm definitely always reminded is how important it is to balance how much you listen to your intellect and how much you listen to your heart and your intuition when you're making these choices with how to make a movie. I mean, it's like, especially with a film like Sweet Relief, it's very dangerous. You're walking the fine line of, having a message, or being thinking that you're Mr. Smart Guy, you've got the world figured out, you're going to tell everybody what's what or something. You know what I mean? And I always remember a Douglas Sirk interview where he said, once you're telling your audience a message, you're making a bad film, So I try to really remember almost to stop thinking so much and stop trying to be such a smart guy, you know what I mean, and more listen to my heart and the fact that what I'm doing is expressing, and so often we are pressured to attach a meaning or a message or something of that nature to our work when it's almost as like a way to quantify its validity or its worth, and that always is just a bad time for me, and I'm like, I need more and more to trust the fact that there's a lot to express. I'm not even sure what it might be saying, but be truthful to the feeling, be truthful to the expression, and be truthful to your intuition is something I'm always realizing. And gosh, there's got to be a lot more than that, though. What else? I mean, what's a funnier answer? That's a very deep answer. I could say, feed your cast and crew well. It'll certainly,
okay. Well, that should always be number one, Nick.
Number one.
Number one.
I've never not done it, but I have realized more and more that is, that pays off. It's like treat everybody very well.
It really does.
Yes, that's essential. Gosh, I mean,
those are some big lessons to learn right there.
Yeah. That's one I'm learning a lot. I mean, I look back at myself maybe 10 years ago when I was watching all these interviews with different filmmakers that I admire, and they would say contradictory things, and I was so often thinking, oh, but which one is right? Which one is right? Which one should I be listening to? And I'm like, you spend so much time trying to be correct or trying to be the one with the best this or that, and it's like, I just, it's a lot of stress and a lot of self-consciousness and overthinking that comes out of that, and when it comes down to it, you are you.
That's it.
And you have to express what you have to express, and a lot of times I try to remember, the whole idea that, I forget what this line is from that I've heard a lot of people quote, but the person sits down to write not because they know, but because they want to know. So I try to remember that, where it's almost like to express myself is the first thing, and then if there's anything to be said from that, it will be said if I'm truthful to the expression, right? So that's something I'm trying to hold on to for sure.
I think you're on the right path. With Sweet Relief, I think you're definitely on the right path. You have created a world. You have made it a believable world with some absurdity, some heightened reality to it, some in-your-face tacit commentary that people are either going to believe as truth or they're not because they're stupid. So you have succeeded there. You have given us some characters that are interesting. Mr. McDaniel is very interesting. Gerald is very interesting. Nathan is interesting because he is a voice counter to what we're hearing from Deborah or from other people who are just consumed with social media. So you have created a world here that is exemplary of the kind of people that are wandering around the streets right now. And you've done it with some really nice production values, a perfect location, an idyllic location. You know how to use that. Joseph, beautiful lighting and lensing. And then that sound mix and Renato's score. That is just, that makes my heart sing for that combo you have right there.
Oh, thank you.
So,
I cannot wait to all these things you're saying.
Nicely done, Nick. Very well done. And I can't wait to see what you do next.
Gosh, thank you so much for this. It was lovely meeting you on the phone. And gosh, it just, I can't tell you how much it warms my heart when somebody not only watches the movie, but actually ingests and responds to the movie. It's like, it makes my life, you validate my whole life. Thank you so much.
Well, I want a sequel, quite honestly.
Yeah, my producer is talking about that. Who knows?
See? Oh, Nick, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me about Sweet Relief. And I hope we get to do this again in the future.
Please, yes. On to the next one. Thank you so very much.
Make another film and we'll talk some more.
Definitely, I will do. I will never stop. Believe that. I'll never stop. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick. And you have a great rest of this evening for you, I think. So
yes,
you
I'm
go.
12 here. I'm going to go back into flipping burgers for another couple hours right now.
Well, you go do that and enjoy that and put out some citronella candles and swaddle yourself in off to keep the mosquitoes away.
Exactly. God, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
And that was writer, director, editor Nick Verdi talking about Sweet Relief. And as I said, if you're in the LA area, you can catch Sweet Relief now at the Laemmle Encino. And for the rest of us, it's available on Eventive VOD. So check it out. You won't be disappointed. Now, switching gears, let's bid farewell to Dances with Films 2025 with one of its closing night films, the hilarious mockumentary American Comic, and my exclusive conversation with director, cinematographer, editor Daniel J. Clark and writer and actor JOE KWACZALA. And as I mentioned, I had a chance to speak with both of them on Saturday before the world premiere of American Comic last night at DWF. American Comic is a verite-style mockumentary, which makes Daniel, with a background as a documentarian, makes him the perfect man to direct this. The film follows two up-and-coming stand-up comedians who, despite their superficial cultural differences, share remarkable similarities when it comes to egotism, self-destruction, and social ineptitude. As the film satirically pulls back the curtain on the unique subculture of stand-up comedy, self-absorbed competitiveness intensifies, leading to some shocking and unexpected revelations. As written by Joe, who is a recognized stand-up comedian, he's been on Comedy Central, and he plays comedy clubs and has done all kinds of shorts and things that are available on YouTube. And Daniel, of course, directed the documentary Behind the Curve. And they have known each other forever. So it makes them the perfect collaborators for this film. This is filmed in real comedy clubs across the country with live audiences who didn't realize that Joe was in character as he was performing. And amazingly, Joe actually plays both roles as the comedians Jay and Jovan, or Jovan, however you want to say it. And he does so with such deftness and skill that you'll be wondering, how does he do it? His transformation between these two characters, these two different comedians, is just wonderful. And I wasn't even sure that it was Joe playing both characters when I first started watching the film. This is an insightful conversation as Joe and Dan talk about the inspiration for the film, which includes Joe's stand-up routines, but was actually, as Joe describes it, inspired by Daniel's documentary work. And when you see the film, you'll understand why Daniel's adeptness at documentaries makes him the perfect director and editor for American Comic. They discuss the challenges and logistics of being on the road and filming in those real comedy clubs and capturing authentic audience reactions. They talk about Joe's challenges in playing Jay and Jovan, each with their distinct personalities. The challenges of hitting more than a dozen comedy clubs and often shooting multiple shows per night. And it's very frenzied as you hear Joe talk about this. And they might be at one club for an 8 o'clock show, then they have to drive to another club and hit a 10 o'clock show. I think, if I recall our conversation correctly, and you're about to hear it, I think they said there were some nights they were doing 4 shows a night. And of course, and Joe goes into great detail because he is a comic, he is a stand-up comedian, and he has played in a lot of these venues and areas, these small clubs. So they go into detail about selecting the clubs and how they got in there to even film. And Daniel also dives into the editing process with a big focus on maintaining authenticity. As you know, there's some mockumentaries that go to the nth degree, and they push it so the whole thing is farcical. This is not. This is rooted in authenticity and realism. And the mockumentary part comes from Joe's stand-up routines, be it whatever character he's doing. I really like this movie. Really like this movie. And I hope you will too, when you get a chance to see it. It does not have distribution yet. Still on the festival circuit. So you can follow the guys and the film on Instagram, where they'll be posting updates on future film festivals and the distribution. So here they are, Daniel J. Clark and Joe KWACZALA talking about American Comic. I'm tickled that Karen could get both of you lined up today to talk about American Comic before your big world premiere tomorrow.
Yeah, we're excited too. What are we, Dan? We're a little nervous, a little excited, a lot of emotions brewing up for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for people to see it in the theater and to hear their reactions. They're good.
But I think that everybody is in for a treat when they come to see American Comic tomorrow. This is funny, guys. This is funny.
Hope so.
I've got to ask you, who came up with the idea to do this mockumentary narrative feature? Because I know, Daniel, you're in the documentary world to a large degree. You do short form, producing, directing. You're stepping into your debut with a feature narrative.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and it's Daniel's documentary work that really crystallized to me that we could do this. And I had, Daniel and I, our backstory is that we have worked together making sketches, making music videos, web series, pilots, we made a late night talk show when we were in college. Like, we've just known each other for a long time. We've made so many things, and it's always been very short. You know, that's something that is feasible, something we can realize with our limited resources. But we've gotten pretty good at it, and I've been very pleased with the production value, and I've been pleased with what Daniel in particular is able to pull off. And we've always had this question of, like, can we take it to the next step? Can we make a movie? You know, that's a different challenge, but how could we do it? When I saw that Daniel, you know, he directed this amazing feature-length documentary called Behind the Curve. It's about flat earthers. It's so riveting. And when I saw that he could do that, it clicked within me that that's how we do it. That's how we make a movie, because he can do this, but let's make it easier for him. Instead of him waiting for something to happen during a documentary, I will just script it. I'll write the comedy, and then he knows exactly how to shoot it, and it will look right. The format will fit the form, and we can maybe pull this off. And that was the idea going into it.
You definitely have pulled this off. And I do love this format, this mockumentary format, that's played with a great satiric bend. It never comes across as a mockumentary. So, there's so many filmmakers, and I'm sure that you both have seen this, where they'll do a mockumentary, but they take it to the nth degree. So you never believe the scenarios that are happening. The authenticity that you give us in these comedy clubs as Jay or Jovan are performing their stand-up routines is fantastic. Those reactions and those sets are worth the price of admission for this film.
No, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was very important to us that we did it for real. I mean, it should feel real because it was done at real venues. It was done at real shows. It was done in front of real audiences who did not know that they were watching. They were watching someone perform in character, that they were a part of a movie. We felt really strongly that this is the only way to make it feel authentic, as if we are just, you know, sometimes you watch a movie about stand-up, you see someone telling a joke, and the audience is laughing, and you're like, that's not funny. I know that's not funny. These are extras who were instructed to laugh at this moment, and we were like, well, the only way we can truly get things across is I have to make the jokes funny enough that people who think they're watching real stand-up are laughing. And if they don't laugh, then that is part of the movie as well. So everything in the movie is genuine, and it's almost like that part of the movie is almost like a real documentary, because the audience did not know they were in a fictional narrative thing.
I approached the movie also kind of as if the director of the movie, in quotes, is a character. So, like, I thought, if I was making a real movie about these guys, how would I film any of these club scenes? And it was just, you know, we weren't going to get a ton of light in a big, giant room and, you know, several angles. I was just like, I'm going to be in the back or with the crowd with my camera and just feel the room and feel it being real. And that was, once we kind of figured that out, that aesthetic would make it feel more authentic, it was pretty easy to just go into these clubs. And for me, it was easy because I didn't have to go up on stage and be a character. But I was just, you know, in the crowd with everybody else. And they were like, oh, this guy's filming, this guy's set, and he's not very good.
This is one of the aspects that I love, because when you're in these clubs filming, Daniel, you're just part of the crowd. So you might be to stage right, one club, you might be to stage left. So even where you are with the camera, it's just like anybody who's sitting in the audience holding up their phone, filming something. It's wherever you land. The only benefit is you've got the camera probably up on sticks, so we don't have any heads blocking the lens. But I appreciate the fact we get different views as an audience member.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I'm glad you said that, because, you know, we did shoot these in real clubs, and a lot of times you're not seeing the audience. But it's this texture of that laughter, and it's the timing of the responses, and even Joe's reaction to them on stage that is really authentic and something you don't often see, because usually, like Joe said, they're extras and they're timed out and they're paid to laugh at a certain point, no matter what the joke is or how it was delivered. And there's just something much more real about Joe's performance, that even though you may only see one or two shoulders in the shot, or the sides of a couple people's faces, you're like, this happened for real, and that adds to the documentary vibe.
Yeah.
Like just said, it kind of was in a way.
Right. And I also think that the presence of the audience, again, like even if you don't necessarily see them at every shot, there's something reflected in my eyes on stage that you cannot replicate in an empty room. And I know Daniel, we haven't talked about this, Daniel, but he and I, sometimes before a show, if the venue would let us in there, we would get kind of some backup footage of me just on stage telling the jokes. And I don't think we used one frame of any of that stuff because you can tell that I'm not connecting with anybody in the room. It's a really subtle thing. Like I'm pretty good at pretending like an audience is there, but you cannot replicate the actual feeling of other people in the room and you looking into people's eyes as you scan the crowd and tell your jokes. Even if you're going through the motions perfectly, it just does not read. And so all that stuff we did as a backup, we did not need, and we wouldn't have been able to use it anyway, I think, because it would have felt off.
Yeah, and sometimes crowds are hot, and they laugh at everything, and they're really enthusiastic, and sometimes they're not. And kind of using both of those textures really, it made it right.
Well,
right, because an empty room, like a completely empty room, does not feel the same as a room full of people who aren't laughing. As weird as that sounds, there is like a noticeable difference between people who aren't laughing and people who aren't there.
People who aren't laughing, it is entirely cringeworthy. And that came across in your stage presence, Joe. You had a completely different body language and reaction when things just fell flat and you could have heard a pin drop in the place because the audience just hated you that much.
It's really, man, that was probably one of the toughest parts of production for me is that sometimes we would have to go on stage and I would know that I was going to bomb. And even though I'm allegedly protected by the shield of this character, I still have to bear that brunt. I still have to feel that awful feeling of just flailing on stage and having a group of people collectively decide that they don't like you without ever talking to one another. It's a real dagger into the heart. And also sometimes, Daniel, you'll remember this, we would, I'd get on stage. We didn't know necessarily that I would bomb. Maybe I had done this same material at another spot earlier that night and it had gone really well. And now here we are, same stuff, the audience just isn't liking it. And so, for the film, we can use either, and it's interesting to use both, but you never really know how it's going to go, and there is something thrilling about it, but mostly scary.
And another aspect where you really excel, Joe, is making eye contact, which is another indicator that, yes, you had real people in the audience. You are very good at working the stage and honing in and making eye contact. You're not looking into the lens of the camera. You are looking at the people that are sitting there. And I really like that because if you look at something, say you watch an old Seinfeld episode and you've got Seinfeld there and he's starting a monologue, he's not looking down from the stage at the audience. A lot of those stand-ups he's looking at the camera lens. And that always annoys me. I want to see the comedian or whomever interacting with the crowd in that one-on-one situation, because when you're on stage, you have to connect with at least one person to give you that grounding. And you work that stage so beautifully. You do not look at the camera and the lens. You are looking at people.
Thank you. Yeah, it's part of that to me in the world of the film is that if this camera has been following these characters for as long as we kind of imply that they have, the cameras wouldn't be, they'd just be part of the background at this point. They wouldn't be super aware unless they're talking to the director specifically, unless they're answering a question, the camera would not be something in the world that they would even think to look into, because they're used to it at this point.
And I love the fact we even get hecklers. That was one of my That was one of my favorite parts, I have to admit, because sometimes some comedians expect hecklers, others are kind of shocked by it. Definitely, Jay was totally shocked, or he feigned shock really well. But
right. And I think he was kind of thrown off by the content of the heckle. But that's another thing that we had to try and attempt to do at a real show. So that's a wrinkle that was very tricky. I think it's the only time, Daniel, where we did a take two, right?
Yeah, because John, who plays his heckler in the film, great actor, very funny guy, played it very intensely, and the audience got a little scared, because what he says is not like a normal heckle of, you suck or whatever. He said something very specific, and the audience didn't know that was happening. And so that was an occasion where the audience not knowing was maybe not useful for us, because it really shifted the vibe of the room. But yeah, we did shoot that in one club. It just didn't work. We kind of felt it as it was happening, and then we reviewed the footage, and we're like, okay, this a little too intense, maybe not going to work, so let's try it again.
Okay, how would you have felt if that was not an actor as the heckler, but it was a real heckler that popped up in the middle of your set?
Well, that would have been fun.
Sure. I'm curious if that had happened during production, would we have been able to use anything quite like that? The heckler in the movie needs to say something kind of specific to move the plot forward. But yeah, I mean, I've been a comedian for over 15 years, and I'm pretty good at handling people who are chatty in the audience, and it could have been a funny thing, maybe put online, right, Daniel? Just someone interrupting our thing. But you always have to be ready for those things, But we were pretty lucky. A lot of this movie people might think is improvised because of the nature of the filming and because it's a mockumentary, but really, it's pretty tightly scripted, and we kind of kept to the script, and if things were happening, we let them fold out the way they might naturally if it was going a certain place. But often it was like, because we were moving so fast, especially in the Midwest, when we go from venue to venue, we go from green room to green room, we have 40 minutes to get what we need. It was just sufficient to just get the script as written, get a few angles, and then hop in the car and go to the next place, because we might have 4 shows to do that night. And in the instance of the heckler not working, I might need to, on the fly, go to a venue and see if they'll let me get up so we can try and do it again.
Yeah.
Wow. How many different clubs did you go to, and how logistically challenging was that in terms of your planning? That just amazes me. This is like a comedy road trip. So I'm curious about the logistics and the number of clubs that you actually picked and how you picked them.
Yeah, I would say it was around 10 at least.
I was going to say, a dozen. It seems about right. When we shot the J stuff in the Midwest, mostly in Chicago and the surrounding areas. We went to, people know the Midwest, we went to Batavia, we went to Oak Park, we went, and then we went to Indianapolis for a show on our way to another spot. And so I came out of the Chicago comedy scene, so luckily I know a lot of people who are still there. I know venues. I'm able to reach out, somewhat explain what I'm doing, see if I can hop on a show and get something going. And we definitely shot at more places than we needed and more places than we used, just so we had options. But in Chicago, it was really, because of that, we only were there for like 2 or 3 nights. We had to get half the movie in there. So like I said, we were maybe doing 4 shows a night, bopping around from, at one point, we were in Oak Park, which is a suburb. We had to drive in and then go in one neighborhood and pop out to another, then come back. It was really, that was the most intense. We did shoot at a lot of local LA clubs. That was a little bit more relaxed because we could, it's our backyard. We can go home after we shoot at a place, and then we can go to another place maybe the next night, maybe in 2 nights. We had a little bit more freedom in that regard. But I reached out to everybody. I reached out to producers and comedians and said, can you help me get up? I'm going to look kind of weird, but can you help me get up at this show? We're working on something. And everybody was very cool. So I have to give it up to the stand-up community for being very open to this strange idea.
Yeah, and what you don't often see, well, what you don't see in the movie is, Joe would get up on these shows and be in character. And we really only needed a small snippet of a certain thing because, again, it was very scripted, so we knew what each show needed to accomplish. So if Joe had to, do a little poorly on a show, he would do a little poorly on purpose, but then he'd still have another 4 minutes to fill of a set. And so he'd have to bring it back, and that was always challenging, but also very interesting to see him kind of have to stay in character but tell good jokes to win the audience over so he didn't tank the show for the people who were kind enough to put him on.
Oh, my God.
Right, because these were not shows. Yeah, these were not shows where it was just me. Usually it was someone else's show. Maybe there would be a handful of comedians, and they're being nice enough to put me on there in the middle of things. Mm-hmm. And so I, out of courtesy to the rest of the show, I don't want to do so poorly that the poor comic who goes up after me can't recover. Right. Like I had to kind of finesse and figure out a way to get what we needed, but make sure that the show doesn't come to a grinding halt. Mm-hmm.
Well, now having said that, Joe, how did this help hone your own comedy chops by having to do that and being that considerate of the other stand-ups who are coming after you?
Yeah. Well, I had tried a few different tactics because I thought maybe what I could do after I was done is that I could then, take the hat off or just kind of reveal to people, hey, I'm actually doing a character. Surprise, you've been pranked. This is going to be for a movie. And what you witnessed was something weird for sure. But now I can be me and I'll tell some real jokes as a thank you and get you guys laughing. I'll send you on your way. I thought that's how I would approach it. That seemed like the nicest way to do it. But what I realized, especially in the Midwest, where maybe they're not as used to people filming things in public, mm-hmm. they would get kind of at best confused and at worst betrayed when I told them that I had been in character and that I was pranking them, especially because I was getting kind of good at working these characters, at figuring out their jokes. Because I approached it like a comedian. When I would tell a joke and it didn't work, I would look at it again and I would think about how I could shift it and mm-hmm. maybe change a detail and then try to get it to work. And that's the process I've been doing for my whole career. And so I started to get good at these characters. And then when I would tell the audience, hey, that was a character, he sucked, that was all like a big fake thing, they'd be like, what are you talking about? We like that guy. And so what I had to do was I just had to figure out a way to get what we needed as the character and then finish as the character and try and incorporate some of my own jokes, but adapt them so that it feels right for the character. And then just never tell them that it was a movie. And then a lot of them were just completely satisfied with what they saw, which was maybe even a little scary.
My God. Well, talking about these two characters of Jay and Jovan, they are two distinctly different personalities. That really comes across. However, they do have commonalities that are shared. They're both desperate for approval. Jovan is very offensive, rude, unlikable, very much kind of like a Don Rickles, but with a bigger ego. And Jay is more tolerable, more down to earth. So I'm curious how you got into character for each one of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was, I joke, a lot of it was growing a beard and then dyeing my hair. That did a lot of the legwork for me. Because I guess on some level, people do treat you differently the way you look. But yeah, with these characters, we wanted them to seem different. But like you said, that kind of desperation, that need for approval, that is so present with every comedian. That's the kind of the thesis of the movie in a way, that, you know, regardless of where you find a comedian, you're always going to find the same kind of core traits and qualities, which is this, you know, desperate need to be loved and this feeling, this God complex kind of thing. But, you know, it kind of started with posture a little bit, like, you know, Jay and voice. Like, I know it sounds very actory, and I don't even think this way that much, but like kind of voice and movement, like, you know, Jay's a little bit lower. You know, I just had to, you know, not go too far with how I modulated my voice, but just kind of like had it down here. Because I think Daniel, when we first started playing with this character, it was a little bit more down here, which does not sound real, and especially the way Daniel shoots it, because he shoots it in such an authentic way. We don't want to go too far with the character so that it feels over the top, right? And so it was just, he's just kind of mumbling and kind of, you know, maybe slightly hunched over in the shoulders and kind of a low voice. And then Jovan, the key was that he was very wound tight. And that, you know, I do a lot of gestures with my hands where he's just kind of like punching his palm, and he's just like, he's always on, he's always performing for the camera. His eyes are bright and engaged and a little sharky. And that the idea would be that he never lets his guard down, because there might be a famous person somewhere nearby. There might be someone who could help him, and that kind of propels the way that he operates 24/7, especially when the camera's on him.
And boy, oh boy, you really milked that aspect. I know some people in the business. Yeah. And you nailed that spot on, Joe.
Thank you.
It's like those photo sessions, hysterical. The bathtub scene is to die for.
Thank you. Yeah, we like that one too a lot. You know, and it comes from an observation I've always had about my stand-up peers, where I'm like, where are you guys finding the time to take all these professional photo shoots? I don't quite get it. Always on Instagram, there's someone who has a new series of really nicely shot video or nicely shot photos, and I'm like, what? I thought this isn't what we do. I thought we told jokes. Why were you? You know, so I had to make sure at any given time he's ready to get his pictures taken.
Just hilarious. But yeah, the bathtub scene, and then the look on your face when the photographer argues and you lose the argument. It looked like a little boy who had been chastised by his mother and sent to sit in the corner.
Yeah, because he's a coward. That's like the thing that, you know, this guy, he's all talk. And that as soon as one person, because I remember when I wrote that, I thought maybe there would be a little bit more back and forth, there'd be kind of an argument. But then I realized, like, oh no, I think what's most effective is that this guy is just, he thinks he can get what he wants, but as soon as one person shows a little bit of pushback, he folds. He completely folds.
Oh, just really well done. And of course, adding to that character is the wardrobe. The granny square crocheted top with the orange shorts. I busted a gut laughing. And of course, he thought it was fashionable and photographable too.
Some would argue it is.
Yeah.
We had a very talented wardrobe stylist who was helping us with all of his wardrobe, because it's very outside of what I do and what I wear. And so she put together a bunch of looks, and they were really incredible, weren't they, Daniel?
Oh, absolutely. Like, yeah, Tip Butterball, and she like assembled all these things, and every time we put them on Joe, we're like, Joe, it looks kind of good. Like we were upset, surprised, whatever, about every outfit that that Jovan ended up wearing, because it was like, oh, this kind of works for you, Joe.
Yeah, they're wonderful. They're wonderful.
Yeah, and actually, that crochet top and the orange shorts. Originally, there was a skirt involved, but we felt like, this isn't quite right. So I think it was just a bathing suit that Joe had. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. But
no, that's right. That's right. We were trying to find out what would pair best with that crochet thing, and we wound up just being like, you know what, my swim trunks. That's going to have to do it.
It worked. It worked.
Yeah, it was great.
Now, one of the aspects of this mockumentary, and every director who has ever directed anything that takes place in a car will appreciate, it is a challenge to film in a car. Mm-hmm. While you, be it still, be it driving, you have limited space. You have to, and if you're driving, you have to worry about the sound of the engine, the air conditioner, the heater, whatever. How challenging was that for you, Daniel?
Well, I've filmed a lot of people in cars in my quote real documentary days, so I kind of have there's only so many angles you can ever get to make it feel real, mm-hmm. And so it was a matter of driving in the right direction so the sun was at the right spot. That was a part of it. And then if we were driving at night, it's dark and we're just trying to get what we get. And filming the dialogue scenes in the car particularly were challenging because that's the one time where, you can't get the right angle on both people at once. So, doing a few takes and cutting that together was easy. But then to make sure it feels natural, you have the camera swinging back and forth. Between the two people, even if you can't see their lips, you can see the back of their heads mm-hmm. talking, and I feel like that was a nice, authentic feel, because that's, again, the whole time we were thinking, this needs to feel like a real documentary and take itself seriously in order to sell the whole concept of the film, because if it feels staged at all, we're in trouble. Mm-hmm. So
it never feels staged. There is not a moment here that feels staged in the entire film. But now, this also begs the question for you, Daniel, because you were also editing the film. Mm-hmm. Were you editing as you went and got footage and realizing you still needed to get more? How was the editing process on this one?
Yeah, so I when we first came, we didn't edit until we finished all the principal photography. Mm-hmm. Maybe we should have started earlier, but we didn't. But I had William Neal is a co-editor on the film, and he and I kind of worked together for 4 weeks, and we pulled together the assembly and then a rough cut and then a fine cut, all within that 4 weeks, which is pretty miraculous. Wow. But we're both from the documentary world, mm-hmm. and so having really scripted scenes where there's camera angles and cutaways kind of built into the shooting, and it made it so much easier. It was kind of like, wait, this is what normal editing is? It's so easy. It wasn't easy. But no, it was just a lot faster than a normal documentary, which takes months, if not years, to really pull together. But we did discover some things along the way. We had a lot of extra scenes. The original assembly of all the footage, I think, was around 2 hours. And we were like, okay, this movie needs to be 85 minutes. Let's go. And so we did that. But we also realized that some scenes weren't working as shot. So mm-hmm. we needed to pick up some stuff. And then, one of the later things we did was we realized we needed to intro a character earlier. So we wrote a scene that kind of just did a little maintenance work for that. But yeah, the editing process was relatively smoother than any documentary I've worked on, I'll be honest.
Were you ever tempted to make Joe look better than he already is?
Oh, I couldn't make him look any better. He's perfect.
Good answer.
What you mean, in terms of the comedy or the laughter?
In terms of the comedy, yeah.
No, I don't think so, because every set that we had really serves the purpose of where it falls in the movie. So, we had a very specific goal with each routine that he did, and he's in different outfits, so we're kind of limited to what we can use. And yeah, it kind of was whatever the audience did, we threw in there. And sometimes, we didn't get exactly what we had scripted at a show, but we made it work. We discovered something else from the set that really did the work that we needed for that scene to do. So yeah, there were some. Those were kind of the more challenging things in the edit, was the stand-up stuff, because it was most actual documentary. So we'd have to go through the sets over and over again, making sure we got the exact right bits.
Wow. This is such a great job. Well done, guys. Now, after the world premiere, are you on the festival circuit? Just like being on a comedy circuit. Do you have other festivals upcoming?
More festivals to be determined.
To be announced. We definitely have some stuff in the works, but that is all. We're kind of all just focusing on the premiere. But for the time being, our Instagram account is going to have all that info at American Comic Film, and I think we'll probably get a website going at some point. But yeah, there's places to follow us and to stay updated on what happens next for the movie. But we're definitely, we're talking to people, and hopefully we'll get to screen this little film at a bunch of places, and hopefully that will lead to getting it available more widely to everybody out there.
And I would say if you're in the LA area, come to Dances with Films. I gotta say, I did a tech check yesterday, and the movie may never look or sound better than in the Chinese theater.
Right.
So,
right.
Well, I know, a friend of mine, Karam, is over there, and he's doing a lot of the tech stuff. And he does a wonderful job. So I know, just knowing that, I know how good it's going to look and sound.
Totally.
And you've got good production values to begin with, Daniel.
Oh, thank you.
This does not look like high school, oops, I'm dropping the camera thing. This is it.
Well, that's good.
You have good production values on here. So
I was just going to say, Daniel always has good production value. It's one of the things that I've been so grateful for with our partnership. As a writer and actor, and someone who doesn't do anything beyond that, having Daniel as a director has been so amazing. But also, he is a jack of all trades, and he was the cinematographer on this. He did the sound on set, and he mixed the sound in post, and he edited the film. And there's just so many different technical aspects that I know I can just trust are going to be good because they're in his hands. And that's such a relief that we don't have to. I mean, we work with a lot of other people, but sometimes knowing that this stuff is getting done by the person who cares about it the most is just so reassuring.
Well,
and like Joe said, Joe's a writer and actor, and those are the two things that I have no interest in doing. So it really works out for us.
Makes this a perfect partnership and collaboration then.
Honestly.
And I'm glad you mentioned the sound, Joe, that Daniel also did the sound, because I have to tell you, that's another dead giveaway that you, in terms of performing, that you were performing in a room filled with people. Because were you not, that lack of full-bodied ambiance will be hollow instead of what bodies in the room bring to the sonic texture. So, nicely done there, Daniel. Nicely done. I'm just so excited for you guys to have the premiere tomorrow. What time is it tomorrow?
6:45.
That's a good time slot, too.
I like it.
Yes.
I got to say, it's perfect. That's exactly when I want to go to the movies.
6:45, perfect time slot. It's a Sunday night, starting off a holiday week. So a lot of people are already going to be thinking about not working. So they're happy to go.
Having some entertainment in their life, yeah.
That's it. Mm-hmm. Well,
and we're also very we're honored that we are at the final night of the entire festival as well. That's a really nice position to be in. We've had the privilege of having the whole festival to tell people about this movie.
Yep.
We've gone to screenings and the events and stuff, and so it was very kind of them to put us at the end, and we took that as an honor, and we are excited to be one of the last films to kind of be closing out this festival. It feels really cool, and we're really excited.
That's what you always want. You either want the opening or the closing. If the closing is supreme, and you gave some of the best reasons there, and because you've had 10 days to get word of mouth out there and talk to people and have people showing up for one movie and then they hear something about your movie upcoming. So it's a great opportunity. So yeah, you guys lucked out. Any bites on distribution yet?
That is not something I think we are at liberty to discuss, but, you know, I guess keep your eyes peeled.
And if you're a distributor, you know, conversations are still open. So
well,
yes,
as I watched this, I immediately thought of Gravitas Ventures as a perfect distributor for this film. Possibly Vertical. This is like right in Gravitas' wheelhouse. If they haven't gotten in touch with you yet, they should.
Yeah, call us.
Yeah, we want to, obviously, we want as many people as we can get to see this movie.
Yep.
So we're going to help that.
Yeah, whatever facilitates, getting this out to a wide audience, you know, is the dream.
Well,
always.
I hope it gets picked up and gets out there for everybody to see. I think it's going to play really well tomorrow and in front of whatever audiences you have in the future. Job well done, guys.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
And thank you for taking time to talk with me today about American Comic. This has been fantastic.
Wonderful. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
And you guys go have a great rest of your day.
Appreciate it. You too.
And that was Daniel Clark and Joe KWACZALA discussing American Comic. Hopefully many of you were lucky enough to catch the film last night at Dances with Films. But if not, as I said, stay tuned, as Daniel and Joe will be releasing updates on Instagram for upcoming film festival screenings and hopefully distribution opportunities. So, that's all the time we have today. But tune in and log on to BTL every Monday at 11 a.m. when the show goes live on YouTube, on 20-plus podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple iTunes, and of course, on BehindTheLensOnline.net. So, and if you miss us on Mondays at 11, it's 11 Pacific time, so that makes 2 p.m. Eastern time. For those that, when our time zones overlap and we don't know what we're doing. It is 11 a.m. Pacific time. Everything drops, goes live, premieres at the same time. And then, of course, the show stays available in perpetuity on the website, on YouTube, and on all of these podcast platforms. So you can always catch up if you miss an episode a week here or there. We've got over 500 shows out there now. So you got plenty that you can listen to. But I hope you listen to this one, and if you don't, and the good thing is you can listen to part of it, such as last week's show was 1 hour and 40 minutes. I know it was long, but there was so much to pack in for Dances with Films. But you can start and stop. So just enjoy. So until next week, I'm Debbie Elias. This is Behind the Lens.